Fozzy Whittaker plays the University of Texas in the NFL. Cardinals, Chargers, Browns, and also a nice long stint with Carolina, the Panthers. He joins us, also a part of ESPN on 365 Sports. Fozzy, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. What are players 2 days out, in this case Texas and Ohio State? You were a part of the big run at the end of the 2000 zeros, I guess you could say, with UT when you were there for big games, including the national championship. What are players doing, thinking, focusing on 2 nights before a game?
I appreciate you having me on. And I think the biggest thing that players are getting focused with is making sure that the game plan that Coach Sark has laid out, same way for Ryan Day as well as Franklin and Marcus Freeman, they all are making sure that they're tightened, buttoned up, making sure every call and check, every adjustment, all of those things are memorized and that it becomes second nature, so that by the time the game comes around, you're able to play fast and not have to worry about thinking so much, but rather going out there and playing loosely. So I think just going over that game plan and the checks and the calls and some of the looks that you expect to see, that's really what I used to focus on and what our team used to focus on whenever I used to play, in order to make sure that we were properly prepared in 2 days.
You are, in an elite fraternity of Texas Longhorn running backs. There's a lot of guys, that have been really great for that program in that. The next one in the fraternity appears to be Quintrevion Wisner. What are your thoughts on him? We know him from when he was a high schooler, but he has really just filled out and become quite a beast, hasn't he?
Yeah, to your point, Trey Weisner was a guy that I wouldn't say he was overly recruited in comparison to a lot of the previous running backs that may have come through the University of Texas, like Jonathan Brooks, who kind of went under the radar. But Bijan Robinson obviously was a highly recruited individual and athlete. C.J. Baxter, highly recruited. Jared Gibson, even in this class that just passed, a true freshman that's playing, was more highly recruited than Trey Weisner. But seeing the way that Trey Weisner came out of high school and then put together this campaign where last year the biggest thing was his impact he was able to provide on special team. And it's a very similar approach to those that make it to the NFL. If you're not a starter in the NFL, you're playing on special teams, and you're playing typically on all 4 of those phases as you get in some rotational moments on offense or defense. And Trey Weisner kind of experienced that to a certain degree a year ago, where special teams was his calling card. Whenever he touched the field, a lot of times it was to be able to make an impact in the special teams game. And he was able to do that last year and had some big tackles and was a part of a couple block punts as well. And then this year, obviously with the injuries at the running back position early in the season, he gets a chance and an opportunity to really assume that number 1 running back position and role, which coming into the season, nobody would have ever thought that would have been the case, even with Jaden Blue on the roster. And I think those two have a healthy competition and a balance that they provide with each other to help give that 1-2 punch for this Texas, whether it's running the ball or being utilized out of the backfield in the passing game. But Trey Weisner has been a pleasant surprise, and part of the reason why Texas is where they are now, playing in the semifinals with a chance to play for a national championship. It's because of the way Trey Weisner has assumed that starting role since pretty much that Oklahoma game in the Red River rivalry, and then has been able to be extremely effective in the run game for a majority of the remainder of the season.
Fozzy, what was your feeling coming out of that Arizona State game? I don't think that was one that Vegas or just prognosticators really felt was going to be all that close, right? Like Texas was going to win this one and win it comfortably. But, man, Cam Scattaboo and Sam Levitt, they had a different idea entirely. Just your thoughts on the game itself, and also just how do you feel about Texas coming out of that game? When you hear about Ohio State right now, it's like they're so hot, they're the hottest team, they're this, they're that. And people almost have seemingly cooled on Texas a little bit because of what happened against Arizona State. So how do you feel about them coming out of this when winning is just the name of the game, right?
Yeah. That just gets you into the door. But ultimately, I was there on site in the Peach Bowl in Atlanta, and it was probably the most amazing atmosphere that I had ever been a part of, especially with what was at stake in the quarterfinals in a college football playoff, win or go home. And it's very new for Texas. I mean, this is only their second year that they're getting a chance to play in the playoffs after making it to the semifinals last year. And just all the nerves that you experienced and every emotion that you can experience, they all unfolded whenever they played on January 1st against Arizona State, right? The high emotions of being able to get a touchdown on your first drive, being able to get a punt return score, being able to slow down Cam Scatterboo, forcing field goals, creating short fields for your team, being up by 2 touchdowns in the game. And then all of a sudden in the third quarter, it's like, wait a minute, the offense didn't even possess the ball. It seemed like they had 6 snaps. And then Arizona State finds some rhythm and they keep plugging and chugging away. And then Texas comes back and have an opportunity to take the lead with a field goal right around the 2-minute mark, and you miss it. But everybody was like, oh man, that's the game right there. We can win, we can be done. And then you got to stop Arizona State, and they do it, get the ball back, have a chance to kick another field goal. And then Arizona State takes the lead. And it just turned into a sea and a whirlwind of emotions that ultimately a lot of Texas fans probably felt a lot of doubt. I mein, 4th and 13, to be able to overcome those types of odds and complete a pass, not only for a first down, but to be able to score a touchdown with Quinn Ewers to Matthew Golden is probably one of the greatest plays for Texas in this modern day era that they'll probably ever have because of what was at stake in the magnitude of the game and being up by so much earlier and then having to fight and claw back and double overtime to win that game. It was a sea of emotions. But the name of the game is to win, survive, and advance. And that's what Texas is able to do. And the talks around Ohio State, rightfully so, have been extremely positive for Ohio State fans, right? They are rocking. They look like and appear to be the most talented team. They appear to be the best looking team. They appear to be the hottest and hitting on all cylinders whenever you need them to be hitting, especially during this playoff run. And that's exactly what they've been able to prove and dominate. Will Howard's been spectacular, hasn't been sacked. That offensive line, which has been given flack all year long as probably the downfall of the offense, they've been able to come together and put 2 games together where they look like they're performing at their best rate ever, and not giving up any sacks and then running the ball very effectively with those 2 NFL running backs and Trevion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. It's going to be some problems. And then you got the man-child outside, right? Jeremiah Smith, true freshman, as everybody have heard. Yes, he's 18, but he is an absolute man and a beast. And something that Texas obviously will have to prepare for and plan for. And it's not just him. Emeka Buka, very talented receiver, 10 touchdowns receiving for him as well. So Ohio State's clicking on all cylinders. But it reminds me a little bit of where Texas was whenever they played against Georgia in the regular season. It was funny because Georgia had already lost to Alabama. And Georgia seemed to be not looking like the Georgia of old. In Texas, coming off of the win against Oklahoma in the Red River Rivalry game, everybody's patting them on the back, right? It was a huge victory, 4-touchdown victory, defense, only giving up a field goal. Everybody's feeling good about themselves. And then all of a sudden, Georgia comes into Austin that following week and punches Texas in the mouth. Now, I'm not saying that exact same type of game will play out for Texas and Ohio State, but it gives me that type of feeling just in reverse of how everybody's praising Ohio State. Everybody's giving them the benefit of the doubt. Everybody loves how Ohio State looks. But it wasn't too far back that Michigan was able to put a game plan together and showcase what it takes in order to make them uncomfortable and get a win in their home facility. And I think that's critically important. But it still is a different Ohio State team and a tall task that this Texas team will have to be prepared for.
Fozzy, you were a part of some teams, depth and all that could pretty much do what you want for the most part offensively. What is it like as an offense when you start to run the ball? Because nobody had really run the ball against UT. And Arizona State stayed patient. Scadaboo didn't get much early. And then all of a sudden, I mean, they just did not panic. And they wore down a defense that I didn't think people could do that to. What is that like on the offensive side of the ball?
Well, ultimately, this is the ultimate team sport. We all know that, right? You got 11 guys all working for a common goal, but it's not just those 11 guys playing for just the offense or playing for just the defense or just the special teams. They all each complement each other, and how that complementation actually works within the game plan is the offense got to pick up first downs in order to help keep the defense fresh. And that wasn't necessarily the case for Texas throughout the course of this game against Arizona State. And that's where the downfall of the defense began to start leaking some water. It's because they were out there for 97 snaps. I jokingly said they literally played 45 minutes of the game, and time of possession felt as though Arizona State had the ball for most of the game. And I know it wasn't 45 minutes. That was a bit of an exaggeration, but that's kind of the stark contrast of how much Arizona State was able to maintain and possess the football, create opportunities for their offense to stay on the football field, convert on third downs, convert on fourth downs in order to extend drives. And it wasn't necessarily an impressive conversion percentage, but the ones that they did convert, they were able to convert on multiple times in that same drive. And eventually, no matter how good your defense is or no matter how great they've been able to perform, if they're out there long enough, that tire factor begins to play a part in a role. And that's where the offense has to be complementary and step in, right? I talked about the third quarter a little bit ago about the 6 plays that Texas was able to run offensively, and 3 of them were sacks. And so they really had almost negative yardage within the third quarter until the final ending going into the fourth quarter. But that means if your offense only had 6 plays and you went 3 and out, had to punt the ball, your defense was out there literally for the majority, probably 11 minutes of the 15 minutes in the third quarter. And that's just not the recipe for success that Texas has been able to experience over the course of the season, as well as whenever you need to be able to slow down somebody like Cam Scadaboo, who gets stronger as the game progresses. That's when you want to be at your strongest. And it felt as though it was the opposite for Texas's defense, as the offense wasn't able to stay on the football field and that defense had to go right back out there and try to get another stop. At the end of the day, they were able to make a huge, impressive play to seal the game, which goes to show you how much fight and no quit attitude that the defense has. But I really put it in the hands of the offense of being able to make it more complimentary, picking up first downs, sustaining longer drives, and then putting points on the board, which is the job of the offense. So that's my mentality as an offensive player, right? We got to make sure we do our job so that the defense can ultimately, in turn, get the rest that they deserve and then go out there and perform at their peak performance to be able to get the ball back to us to put up points.
Fozzy, what overlaps and differences do you see between Mac Brown and the way that he ran a program and the way that Coach Sark is running this program now?
The number one similarity that I see between both of these two great coaches is the synergy that they experience and the synergy that they give off. And it's not just necessarily the synergy with like the athletic director, Chris Del Conte, but the synergy with all of the assistant coaches and the staff that are on the sideline. There's so much positive energy that flows and roams around this room, but everybody's attitude is working towards that same goal. And it starts with what Steve Sarkeesian talks about, is being tough all day and then putting in the work, right? They don't take any shortcuts. And the plan to success has always been what he said whenever he stepped on campus day one, and he hasn't faltered from that yet. And seeing how the coaches have bought into that, and then in turn, the players being a reflection of their coaches buying in as well, and leaders stepping up, players that are younger also showing some accountability, being able to be reliable and dependable, especially during the time where this offense this year has probably had the weirdest case of injuries with, your starting receiver, your starting quarterback, 2 starting running backs, your starting left tackle, your center, your starting right tackle. They've been decimated all throughout the course of the year with some pivotal players that play a key role in the success that Texas is expecting to have. But Steve Sarkeesian, with the mentality he's been able to possess, that next man up, that person, hey, no matter who's in there, we're going to trust and believe in you and give you the tools to be successful. That's the same type of mentality that Mac Brown had. And I think that synergy is contagious and it's infectious, and it's created an opportunity for Texas to kind of relive the glory days at the end of the 2000s where I played with Mac Brown, where we had consecutive 10-win seasons, able to win a Fiesta Bowl, able to win the Big 12 championship, and then also go on and play for a national championship. It's the same ingredients and the same makings that Steve Sarkeesian has created from a foundational standpoint, as well as the buy-in by the staff and the players to be able to put Texas in back-to-back appearances in the semifinals for a national championship opportunity.
Fozzy, there's a lot of discussion. We had Mac on last Friday. He was on with us, and, of course, he was in Austin for that game against Auburn last night, basketball. But that was a run that at the beginning, Ricky Williams, I think his first or second year, Heisman Trophy winner in 98, and then they were just really good. And, of course, some great games against Oklahoma, the national title win, and then that game with Alabama. But there's always been this, like, almost this blame that things fell apart because other great quarterbacks were going elsewhere. Andrew Luck, RG3, whatever. Garrett Gilbert, in my opinion, was almost as a perfect high school football prospect I've ever seen when he was at Lake Travis. What was the feeling within the program when he followed Colt McCoy?
Yeah, everybody had a ton of confidence in G2. That's what I call him. But Garrett Gilbert, man, like you mentioned, everything that he was able to put together in doing his high school career, he was unbelievable. And a player that was unmatched, Gatorade National Player of the Year, and everything pointed in the direction of the offense being handed over and basically picking right up where Colt left off, because that's recency bias, what we have expected. Vince Young, you were able to win a Rose Bowl and a national championship at the Rose Bowl. And then Colt comes in and Texas still wins 10 games. And then you win a Fiesta Bowl, win a Big 12, and then go on to play for another national championship. So recency bias said, oh, Garrett Gilbert got to be the same way. He has to do the same thing. And unfortunately, that national championship game where he was thrust into the action as a true freshman kind of showcase how big of a gap it is to be able to play in your first year against a defense like that at Alabama. And you had multiple first-round draft picks, multiple NFL prospects as well, defensive side of the ball, as well as Nick Saban, the mastermind, being able to get them in positions. And once Colt goes down, the game plan changes for us offensively, just because Garrett hasn't had the reps underneath his belt to be able to do what we needed to do. And even with that being said, we were able to cut the lead down to 3 with an opportunity to take a lead in the fourth quarter before that final interception, kind of sealed the deal for us. But it still set up an opportunity for Garrett that he really never seemed to rebound from, because he had so much pressure on him. And I don't think it's necessarily fair to put the same amount of pressure that you just had the most electric quarterback to come through the University of Texas, and then the winningest quarterback following him up in the history of college football at that time, with Colt having the most wins ever. And the expectations for Garrett were extremely high and probably unfairly placed on his shoulder. And just the way that the offense moved in 2010, and it wasn't a great year or a great season. A lot of people don't really know, but Garrett actually hurt his shoulder, his throwing shoulder, and tried to play throughout the course of that entire season, which ultimately rendered him fairly ineffective from a standpoint of being able to take care of the football and throw the ball accurately, which attributed to a lot of the turnovers that the offense felt. And we felt as though we let the defense down. That's kind of the complementary aspect I was talking about with Arizona State and in the quarterfinals and the Peach Bowl. Our defense was still a top 10 defense that year. Offensively, we couldn't put points on the board. We couldn't take care of the football. We had too many turnovers, and we just couldn't sustain drives in order to continue to help our defense. And it ultimately resulted in some fraction between our team, just because we weren't able to get the job done And we bounced back in 2011, but Garrett ends up having to cut his season short because of another injury and then enters into the transfer portal. But ultimately, the expectations, I think, were just unfairly put on his shoulders with what came before him. And then whenever he got his opportunity, not being completely healthy and trying to play through some of that injury, I think negatively affected his confidence and also negatively affected his appearance to a lot of the Texas fans.
Do you have time for a couple more questions?
I'm here.
You were there, and then, of course, we know things started to slide. Mac left, and then Charlie Strong didn't have much success, and even Tom Herman on and off, and then Sark his first year. This is my opinion. Even when Texas has been not quite, of course, not near the standard, they still seem to have this edge or this confidence that it's going to be okay. Now, every team goes into a game, everybody thinks they're going to win, but that's not always the case. Is there, and I've seen this, Ohio State's a heavy favorite. I don't think they are. I think it's a great football game. But is there kind of a confidence within that program, even if 5-7, 2-5, whatever, that they can win, that there's still this something about UT football they're going to win the game?
Absolutely. The confidence that Texas players and the fans, all of them that they have, it comes from what they've been able to experience and go through. And for players specifically and for coaches specifically, this is what the preparation has always been about throughout the course of the year, right? You start off early January, early February with the 5 a.m., 6 a.m. workouts. You're waking up. Nobody's on campus at that time doing things that you all are doing and putting you through drills and workouts that you got no business doing from a strength coach. In the preparation and the meetings that you still have to take part in before spring ball and what we used to call county fair, where you got the circuit workouts with all the coaches where they just trying to kill you and see who is able to mentally stay tough and who is physically tough and who needs work. And they're doing all of these things in the off season that helps kind of create a culture and a foundational piece for what that team is and the identity of that team is going to be for the entire year. That's what a lot of players reflect back on, and that's what they lean into whenever they prepare for a game like this, right? First time Texas has been an underdog, and I want to say it's 23 games since Alabama of last year when they traveled to Tuscaloosa. So it's been quite some time since they've been an underdog, but at the end of the day, the players don't care about that, whether they're favorites or underdogs. The thing they care about is whenever it's 6:30 p.m. Central in Dallas, the ball is getting ready to be kicked. What's my assignment and how do I physically impose my will? Because all of those 6 a.m. workouts, all of those after class workouts and meetings that I was able to put in, the sand pit, bear crawls, right? The stadiums, the ladders, the one-on-one sessions with the quarterback whenever nobody else is up at the school, all of that is where I'm pulling from to be able to say, hey, I trust in my teammates, I trust in my coaches, I trust in my family, right, which is your brothers around you, to be able to go out there and put your best foot forward. And I think that's the confidence that Texas has to be able to say, hey, doesn't matter what the outside noise is. It doesn't matter what Vegas says the line should be or how many people have praised Ohio State or how many people have praised Texas or dogged Texas, whichever way you want to put it. But at the end of the day, we're the ones that control the outcome of this game. And if we play the game that we know we can play with the work that we've put in, we have a chance to be successful and win this game. And I think that's what they'll have to do in order to play and win against a team like Ohio State, who has the same type of mindset and philosophy.
Yeah, they're one of the few teams that both look in the mirror at each other or look across the table, and they're kind of that same kind of feeling. You have that picture behind you. Fozzy's Future Heroes, Hope, Empowerment, Restoration, Outreach. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so that is the nonprofit that I actually started while I was playing in the NFL. And whenever I was in Carolina, it was the inspiration, a guy by the name of Thomas Davis, who is an incredible linebacker. We used to call him the mayor of Charlotte, Georgia graduate as well, and first-round pick as a safety and converted into a linebacker and had a very successful season in the NFL. But the outreach that he would do around the Charlotte area, and not just in Charlotte, where he grew up in Shelman, Georgia as well, he would go back and be so accessible to so many kids and have an opportunity to impact so many kids in both of those cities and other cities that he was also a part of. And that was kind of the root inspiration to be able to start my own foundation, run free football camps for kiddos from first grade all the way up to high school. I do that in Austin. I also do that back home in my hometown in Pearland at my high school. We do giveaways. We also do fundraising activities to help. And it's mostly to be able to give back to the youth, and in particular, those that may have been in troubled areas or don't have father figures or are coming from a single parent household, whether they only have a father or only have a mother, those that are in low SES communities, or those that never had access to talk to a retired professional athlete before, or don't have the funds to be able to go to a football camp from a retired or at the time a current NFL football player. And so put that together and try to provide some support any way that I can to the youth that may be troubled or looking for opportunities to get some experience that otherwise they may not have gotten a chance to, or would have cost a lot more money to do it with somebody else.
The pride of Pearland, Fozzy Whittaker. Hey, man, thank you very much for your time with what you do on ESPN, what you did in college, and also in the NFL, and what you're doing with the kids. Thank you very much.
I appreciate you all having me on, man. You all stay warm as well. That weather is coming through. It's already cold, but just make sure you stay safe and warm.
You too. Fozzy Whittaker with us on 365 Sports. Appreciate his time.